Hello and welcome to another episode of my retro watches. This episode is a bit of an off-the-cuff one. What you're looking at here is a Seiko 6119 6023. I bought this as a complete and utter wreck. I'll put a photo on the screen now for your enjoyment. And as you can see, I couldn't see much. The crystal was all frosted over. It was a complete and utter gamble to see if there was a good dial under there or not. And then when it arrived, there wasn't. And the watch needed considerable restoration. I've spent quite a few days and nights servicing the movement. I've fitted a new crystal. I've polished the bezel. I've refinished the case in its entirety. To the best of my abilities. It's not perfect. There are lots of little niggles about this one for me personally, but however, that's not what this particular video is about. This video is an attempt to relume the indices. I've never done this before. Well, I tell a lie, I've done one little practice today, which I'll go into a little bit more depth as we go through the video. This watch I think could benefit from it. It's a learning curve for me, and I can also show you how I'm going to attempt it. I've got a little bit of tips off some friends to help me along the way. Luming is fairly straightforward really. It's just having a calm, steady hand and knowing what you're doing. So the plan, like I say, will be to strip the old lume off this dial, and then we're going to mix up the new stuff and apply it. I'll tell you the lume I'm using. I can even tell you where you can buy it from, and this will be a bit of a step-by-step, so hopefully the end results are pretty good. So without further ado, I'm just going to take this watch apart and get that dial. Incidentally, if you are wondering, I will also be luming, probably not in this video though, the pip on the second hand, and of course the hour and the minute hand also need reluming as well, but I've done a video on those already before, so I'll leave that one out. This is going to be purely about the indices, but perhaps right at the end when it's all rebuilt I can do a proper shot so you can actually see everything as it's panned out. Should this dial be relumed? It's got so much patina that perhaps we should leave it alone. However, I just think it might enhance it a little bit, so that's the reason I'm doing it. Before you start commenting thinking, no, you shouldn't do that. Here we go. So without further ado, let's get the dial off, and then we can start the video in full seriousness. Okay, there's the dial all stripped off, and let's try and offer up to the camera a bit better. So you can see the lume's gone rotten, and it's not very good at all, and it's not very effective because it's not actually doing the job that it's meant to do. So the first thing we've got to do is strip off the old lume, and the only way you can do that is by rubbing something up against it. I guess I'm going to use a bit of pegwood. Now this worked quite well earlier on the other one, so I'm just going to try and pick on one in general. And as you can tell, it's going to be sort of painstaking work to strip off all of that lume. I don't particularly want to use anything that's steel or metal like a screwdriver, because I can either slip or I could damage the actual indice itself. I'm sure using something metal would make it come off quicker. However, it's like the hare and the tortoise, isn't it? Slow and steady is always going to win the race here. So I'm not going to sort of do every single one of these on camera. I'm going to strip all this off now, come back and show you what it looks like once it's all removed. Well, here we are on the microscope, and I've had to resort to plan B. The pegwood on this particular dial doesn't work very effectively anyway. On the other one I did in preparation, it came off dead easy. So I've had to resort to a bit of brute force, and that's by trying to use a screwdriver under the microscope and try and prise it off very gently. I'm going to show you one of the indices right here now. I'm going to try and do it, and I'm probably about 30-35 minutes into this already, and I've still got another 3 or 4 to go. So it's been pretty time consuming, but hopefully I can catch this bit on film for you. Now, whether it's going to be in total focus, I don't know, because my eyes are worse than the camera lenses, so by the time I'm looking down the microscope I've usually seen blur. So here's the screwdriver. I'm actually using a yellow screwdriver, I can't remember the size of that, and I'm just trying to push this to slice a bit off. Like so. And it's very old, this lume. It's almost like it's got oil or something in it. It's strange in its texture. And what you can see is the excuse me, or hopefully you can see, is the indice underneath is very dull, and I'm led to believe that these are normally like silver in colour. So I just think that's coming off a bit with the lume that I'm picking off, but also it's just an age thing, and it's been eaten away probably by whatever's contaminated the lume itself over the years. Now also I've got Rodico under the dial, so I'm not damaging the dial feet in any way. So again, I don't know if that's coming through because I'm looking through the eye lens. It's just painstaking chipping away. Now if anybody has got a better way of doing this, or the right way of doing it, then please let me know. Like I say, this is really my first time doing it in anger on a watch that I want to keep. So it's very much a learning experience, and here I am trying to show you. So if it goes wrong, you can blame me, and of course if it goes right, then I'll take all the credit. Thank you very much. So I just want to finish this particular one off, because then what I'm doing is I'm taking it onto my bench, and I'm just also then rubbing this with the pegwood, because the pegwood cleans the top of the indice up a little bit better as well, which you'll see in just a moment. So let's blow that away. You can see there's a little bit there. Now you'll have to look at a blank screen for a moment. And I will just get my pegwood. And I'll give it a little rub. And then when I put it back on, you can see there, I'm just trying to see now but with my own eyes. So yes, so it doesn't look too bad. I'll Rodico any excess off as well, and if I feel there's more little bits, which there have been on some of them, then I will try and just gently take them away a bit like that. I don't know how perfect it's going to be, because the next phase you'll understand why. You can see here just some of the ones that I've already done, and yeah, so I've got a couple more to do now. Look, 2 more, so I'm going to do those, and then we can go on to the next phase. Okay, finally all the lume has come off, and now we're left with pretty rough looking indices. Now I have tried again with the pegwood to try and remove any of that rust or whatever you'd want to call it. I don't know how else to try and polish those. So the next plan is going to be, well, let me show you the old one. So the one I did as a practice. So if we get here and we look at, that's the 12 o'clock marker. Obviously excuse the state of the dial because the dial is pretty horrendous. What you notice, let me just find something to kind of point with, is around the edges it sort of looks duller than it does on the actual indice. And again, if we move to another one, you know, don't forget we are looking on a microscope, so it's going to make it look 10 times worse than it really is. But you get these little dark patches along the edges, and that is, and again this is a really good indication, it's just because of the way the lume goes on and the way it sort of pulls on the indice itself. It doesn't get to the edges. So I was told by a good friend of mine to do what I've done there, albeit that looks a bit crude, and it is to paint the indices white. So if I paint the indices white with some acrylic paint, let that dry, then I can lume over the top of that, and that will prevent the rough edges, so to speak. So we're going to now paint, or I'm going to attempt to paint, should I say, the indices, and I'm going to try and paint them on camera, which makes it even better because I've only done one so far. And the way to do that is with some acrylic paint. So I'm going to use a bit of acrylic paint, and I'm going to use an oiler. So I'll just get set up for that, and then we'll attempt to do it on the dial itself. Run it along. Now, sorry for the silence, but of course I'm trying to concentrate what I'm doing. I'm trying to make sure that I get a good coating along those edges. And I don't want too much either. So the thing with the acrylic paint is that when it does dry, which is very quickly, it'll dry flat. But you also get to see, this is almost exactly how the lume itself is going to be applied. So I'm kind of happy with that. It's just that little edge there that's bugging me a bit. You can already see that it's picking up. And then I guess I want to try and get it as evenly as I can. So again, not super perfect on that one. If I'm not completely happy, I can wipe it off. As I say, it's my first attempt, so perhaps I'll just try another one. Okay, that is all the dial indices painted white with the acrylic paint. I've left it to dry. I've actually left it to dry 24 hours. I know that wasn't needed, but there we go. And it's dried a little bit bad in my eyes. I don't know whether it's going to come out in camera. It's quite lumpy if you certainly look at the 12 o'clock indice there. And we'll see a bit more of this when we go on the scope. And I was a little bit concerned, thinking, well, do I start again? I mean, obviously, as I said, this is my first time. But then I think, well, you know, I'm going to loom over the top of that, and perhaps the loom will level out and sit a bit better anyway, and perhaps having these so rough isn't so important. So I'm going to try that method, and hopefully my thinking is going to be correct. So I'm going to talk a little bit now about the loom I'm going to use. So I'm just going to move that out of the way for the time being. The loom I'm going to use is this one, and I'll have a link down below to the eBay seller. This company called Kilobits. I think that's how we pronounce it. Can't remember exactly now. And this guy does lots of different luminous powder. It's not specifically for watches. I think he does it for all kinds of things. His listings are there's loads of different colours and lots of different sort of stuff that you can buy from him. I started with a different one to this originally, and see if I can find it. And I think I've put it away actually. So I had a different one to this, and it was a little bit too coarse. And so I emailed the seller, a guy called Nigel, and he told me that he sells this one here, which is a finer grade of, or grit size, whatever you'd want to call it. And this is well, it says 10 grams in weight. The size was 10 microns, I think, and the other one I was using was about 40 microns, so it's a massive difference. And of course, the finer the powder, the sort of better it is. Certainly if you were doing hands and things like that, it's just going to give it a nicer finish. The reason I'm using this as well, one is it glows really well, but this huge bag, and it is a big bag for what, certainly for what us guys in the watch repairing and tinkering sector would use this for. This cost £5 to buy, and this will last me for years unless I drop it and it all falls out. So it's worth a try, and of course you will see the results of this at the end. So not only are you going to need some loom powder, you don't have to use that one, of course, you could use a different version. You then need something to bind it with, and I use this, which is just some matte clear coat varnish, really. This is the Umbro one. This is like a model making stuff, and I guess there's other brands as well. And you might need some thinners. I've got thinners. Rarely do I use it. I've used it really for paint rather than actual loom. So what we're going to do is, I've got a little tray. You can use anything for this. We're going to put a bit of loom in there, and then we're going to put a bit of the binder in. We're going to mix it to the right consistency, and then we're going to go on the microscope and we're going to start applying the loom. So I've added some powder into the tray. It's probably way too much, but I'd rather make more and have too much than make too little and have to try and remake it and get the right consistency. So you bring in the clear coat, and I've got an old syringe, not that it works. This had actually some I forgot what they call it now, conductive paint on it for some of my digital watch repairs, but I'm just going to use this just to drop some of this, and I put it next to the loom. Like so, and then I'm going to try and mix it in. I've got a very old oiler, hasn't even got the right end on it anymore, and I'm just going to try and combine the two. And the joy is, if you've got too much, I just see something there that I don't like. Yeah, if I've got too much, then we just add some more powder. And I think that might be the case right here, right now. Now, when I've loomed hands before, and I've done, I think, 2 videos all told, of looming hands. I've made it a little bit more runny because you want it to sort of go over the gap, whereas trying to do an indice, you don't want it too runny, because if it's too runny, then there's a chance it could, I suppose, run off the indice as you've applied it and go onto the dial, and of course that is not going to be desirable at all. And obviously, you know, I'm doing this really for the first time in anger, so I'm going to be a bit cautious. To me, this, I don't know whether you could kind of see, I think this is still just a touch too runny. You know, I'm not going to use a great deal, but I'm just going to add a bit more powder. And then to add a bit of powder, because I only want a little, I'm just going to do it with the end of a screwdriver. So we'll see if that's enough. And I don't know if this is really coming out on camera, the consistency I've got here. If I was cooking, I'll be looking for meringue quality of sort of soft peaks. I think that's not looking too bad at all. And the only way to find out, I guess, is to try. So let me get it all set up, and we'll try and apply some of this actually onto the dial. Okay, so now you can see what I mean by the indice and the way the paint has dried on that. So, you know, it could be that the surface was as rough as that. I don't know whether it was really. I think it's just the way I painted it and the way the paint's been mixed, perhaps. If anyone out there knows more, please let me know, because I haven't got a clue. Right, so here we go. This is the first one we're going to try and lume. And basically I'm using the same oiler again. I've put a little bit of lume on the end. And I'm just going to try and let that flow along and cover as much of the part as I dare. I think the key thing here is to not put too much on the oiler, just enough. And of course, now they're painted white, it's quite hard to actually see, or it is for me. I'm trying to get a good coating, certainly on these corners, because it was the corners that bothered me. So I think that one is okay. I'm going to move on and do a few more, and work my way slowly but surely all the way around. And then I've got to let it dry, of course, and then we'll see what we get from there. But that's basically the principle. Now don't forget, of course, as well, that we're under a lot of magnification here. We're on ×20 on the microscope, so any imperfections you see on here, I doubt very much we're going to see through the naked eye. I can see, for instance, there's a couple of air bubbles there, and perhaps, you know, I might be able to go in and just see if I can correct that. Yeah, you see I've made a bit of a mess now doing that, but there we go. I'm not going to say this is going to be perfect by any means. This is something I guess you've got to do over and over again to get good at it. So like I say, I'm going to work around. Maybe I'll film a bit more of this, and you can watch and enjoy as I struggle. Okay, well there we go. I've loomed all the indices. You've seen that. I don't know what your thoughts will be at this stage. I don't even know how good the film has actually been. However, we will now let that dry and hope that I mean, you can already sort of see that they're settling a little bit. So like I said, I'll let that dry. It takes 3 or 4 hours, I think, really, to go off properly. And then we can test. And I'll come back to you in a blink of an eye for you guys, but a fair few hours for me. Okay then, drum roll, the moment of truth. There it is. And what do I think? I think it's blooming awful. It's dried not very well. I think I know what mistakes I've made, and let me see if I can get it on camera. So there is a few little holes, if you like, so little bits like this, and some of them look a bit more uneven than others. And then if I look from different angles, as you can see, hopefully some are bigger than others. So I'm really disappointed. I mean, the look at itself from a distance doesn't look too bad, probably a bit too white, but then by the time it's back in the watch and stuff, it would look a bit better, I would hope. However, what I think has gone wrong there is, first of all, as I was working it in, it was sort of drying out a little bit. So if you had noticed on some of the faster video that I've played there, that certainly towards the end it seemed to be a bit more gloopy. So I think what I've got to try and do is mix it a bit thinner and apply it a lot quicker. So just like quickly, 1 or 2 strokes. And then that's enough. Trying to pat it down and do what I was trying to do to get it in the corners is obviously not the right way to do it at all. So there's my first attempt, folks. However, I'll tell you what we'll show you. Let me show you a bit of lume, perhaps. So if we just got an ultraviolet pen torch thing here, and I can just charge it up a little bit and try and hit some of the lights I've got here anyway. Not very many. That's not really working, is it? No, the camera doesn't want to pick it up. However, the lume itself is good. You can kind of see from this pen, can't you, really? So I'm going to have to go back to the drawing board. I'm going to have to take it all off and do it all over again. So rather than suffer you guys with that, I'll do most of that off camera, I think. Okay, here we go with reluming the dial, take 2. Now in removing the failed first lume, it actually removed all the paint as well, so I've had to repaint all of those indices, and it's also repainted just as bad as the first one. I don't really see much improvement at all, so it's either the paint or it's me, and I'm tempted to think it's me. There we go. So I'm just going to mix some more of the lume powder and try and mix it a little bit more runny this time, and hopefully then apply it a little bit smoother. I'm probably going to concentrate whilst looming, so I'll probably do a fast forward type of video so you can at least see what I'm up to, but I do need to concentrate really. So I'm going to mix up the lume now and show you the consistency I get on that one, and hopefully this will be a better result. Right, so as quick as that, that's all of them loomed. It kind of went on a little bit better. I'm now going to inspect it and hope to God that it's sitting a little bit flatter, because if it isn't, I don't know whether I want to do this a third time. So I'm going to check. Hopefully if it's good, I can let it dry, and then hopefully then after that you'll be able to see the end results of all of this. Okay, here we go for take 2, the finished result. And here it is. So what do I think doing it the second time? It actually has come out a little bit better, or a lot better. I'm still not completely happy, but let me just see if I can point a few things out. So the loom itself, if I look at a better angle, is now sitting a lot flatter. It's not lumpy, so it's fairly consistent. But where it isn't consistent is where I've not applied possibly enough. And you can kind of see there's two little telltale signs that I can see. So if I look at this one here, for instance, it's a combination of there not being enough loom and also possibly not enough paint, because it does look a little bit off in its colour and its size, really. Same with the one at 6 here. I think that's a little bit too thin in places. However, bring in the loom torch, and if we charge these up, again, I'm not sure if I kill the lights how much you guys are going to see. Yes, I think I need to kill my big light. So let me go and kill my big light. One sec. Okay, I killed the main light. I'm just on my little spotlight now, so it will look a little bit different. So again, like I say, I'll just charge it up, hit the lights, see if the camera focuses. There we go. So that doesn't look too bad, but there are still, you won't be able to see where I'm pointing, but at 11 o'clock it's a bit faded. Again at 5 o'clock, not as pronounced as the other ones. Same with 9 o'clock over here. You know, they're okay, and I think for a first attempt it's pretty good. Let me just put the lights back on. Yeah, I think for the first attempt that is pretty good. Well, a second attempt. Will I go back and do these? To be honest with you, I really am tempted. I would like to get it a little bit better. It's certainly good for practice. However, this video so far has been taking me 3 days to get to this point, and I don't really want to start tearing this apart yet again just now. So I think I'm probably just going to rebuild the watch now, show you the end result, and then if I do some reluming on another dial or some hands in the upcoming weeks or months, then I may then revisit this one when I'm in a better mood to do so. So I'm just going to rebuild the watch, show you the end piece, and then that probably will be the end of this video. Okay, so before I bring the video to a close, I just thought I'd say that, well, my final thoughts really. So I've got the watch on and I'm looking at it and I'm still on the fence, the truth be told. Perhaps I even like the old dial or the old loom better. However, we'll have to wait and see. It's done now, isn't it? So it was a bit of an exercise. This dial was pretty ropey to start with anyway. And I still may have to go back in and relume those couple of indices, because it's starting to bug me now a little bit. And I've also fitted a new set of hands, because the hands were absolutely ruined by the time I got them off and stripped the loom off. I found that they're actually rusted through, so I've had to order some new ones. So I'm going to finish by having a bit of a montage at the end here, so you'll be able to see this watch as it is with the new hands on, and see what you think. I'd welcome all of your comments, criticisms, tips, if you've got any tips to help me try and overcome this new skill that I'm trying to learn. Also, I hope that other people out there may have learned something from either my mistakes or from what I've actually done in this video. Proves that anyone can have a go at this. It's not particularly difficult. It's just learning a bit of a knack, that's all. So like I say, I'm going to end with some video montage so you'll be able to see the watch as it is, but also I'm going to show you what it started out as, because this thing was an absolute total wreck. So not only have I serviced the movement, but I've restored everything as best as I can. Maybe a bit over polished in places, but that was a compromise. It was just to see how far again a watch can go before it's dead. Once again, Seiko have proven to me that these things can go forever and ever and ever and ever. They are pretty much indestructible. So thanks very much for watching. Please give me a like if you enjoyed it, and please, if you're new to the channel, consider subscribing. It does help me quite a lot. See you very soon in the next one. Thanks very much. Bye for now.